Hey, Leela Viss here. I'm excited to share a new resource that I have for you to inspire your students on and off the bench. So I want to tell you a little bit about it, but you need to know a little bit about the backstory. So the first thing you need to know is something about Sherry's cookies. Now Sherry is a friend of mine, and her son Eric came over to our house about a month ago when we didn't have to practice all this social distancing, and he brought over some cookies. And these cookies were amazing. Now, Sherry had made them, and whatever Sherry makes, we know is going to be spectacular. But these were just really plain old sugar cookies, but boy, did they taste good. Now, she had put a few little green sprinkles on the top for St. Patty's Day, but other than that, they weren't really anything super fancy, but they were delicious, and it was because she used quality ingredients. Now, I gotta be honest, she had flour and sugar in there, but of course, lots of butter. So it was all quality ingredients, maybe just a few, but they were quality ingredients. So why am I talking about this? Well, this inspired my idea for a composition unit for my students. And so I was going to do this with my students during this session of lessons. And it just turns out that I kind of shared it a little early for all of you because I think this may be a really good time for you to do the same thing with your students, especially if you have an off-bench component. So I'll get to it in just a second. Now, I call it a cookie cutter composition resource because it's important to know a little bit about the background of that cookie cutter theme. It's because when we roll out cookies that we cut with a shape, they're all very uniform. And really, you have to follow that structure. There's not a lot of different things going on. It's not like an ooey gooey chocolate chip cookie. But that's on purpose. The decorating of those cookies makes it fun and makes your cookie original. So this cookie cutter composition resource is really a recipe for built-in success with occasions for creative decision making. And the built-in success is offering students two really important things about a composition, in my opinion: form and chord progressions. So that's what the basis of this resource is. But let's go deep. Let's go a little deeper here. And first of all, it's important to have a taste test. Okay. Now here's the deal. You know, why are we going to want a recipe for a cookie if we've never tasted it before? That's what happens is, wow, we tasted Sherry's cookies, and then Sherry, can we have the recipe right away? And same thing, if your grandma bakes really good cookies, or if your dad bakes really good cookies, we want that recipe, and we want to know how they baked them. So my philosophy is, we like to bake what we like to eat, so we should create what we like to listen to. So here are some ideas of what I do for my students before they're actually going to get creative. Okay. First of all, one of my favorite things to do is to inspire them by what other people are doing, especially professionals, but basically what other people are doing and playing. And so I have a new Get Inspired episode. It's number 19. If you haven't seen those before, they're at my blog, leelaviss.com, and it's all free. But basically what I do is I collect YouTube videos and I have fun just making a collection of them. Somehow there's a theme. Now this theme for episode 19 is all about pop music. And what I did in that episode is I found a whole bunch of different favorites for different ages, different styles. I don't know. I may add and subtract some to that list, but I'd be happy to hear your suggestions as well. But what I also add in at the bottom of each video are chord symbols. And then I also have little pictures of how to play the chords on the keyboard. And then I also have the numbers of each of those chords so students can transpose that chord progression into new keys. Now the other thing is I include the secret about how to slow down a YouTube video. Yes, you can do that. So if you're not aware of that, it's a really cool thing. And that way students can play along and play by ear, develop their ears, and get to know chord progressions and be creative with them. So that's one way to start tasting things, getting used to the sounds of things and choosing chord progressions or styles or ideas from others, getting inspired by others. Now, the next thing, before I forget though, one of the things that I'm offering at that Get Inspired episode is this checklist. And basically, I don't know, you could play bingo with it if you want, but there's a checklist of things for students to accomplish. Make sure I get that in front of the camera. And as they complete them, they can just check them off. This would be a wonderful thing for them to do at home. I'm sending all of my students one of these pieces of paper in the mail, snail mail, so that I know that they have it, and then they can start checking things off as they complete it. And one of them, I'm just going to give you a tip here. If anything, I always have my students learn that chord progression, that heart and soul chord progression, because if they know that progression, they know the 4 chords of about every possible song ever. So this is free at the Get Inspired episode 19. You can just sign up for that. So next, another way for them to start organizing their thoughts about the eventual composition that they're going to create is using the 321 challenge. Now, I think a number of you, thank you very much, have purchased this 321 challenge, and I want to put it to work for you again. Now, in case you forgot what the 321 challenge is, it's basically, the idea behind it is giving students 3 boundaries. Again, giving them small things to work with instead of this huge wide open blank canvas. So 3 boundaries, and experiment with those boundaries 2 minutes one time every day. 2 minutes. Atomic Habits person James Clear always talks about, establishing a new habit. It only takes about 2 minutes a day. So that's why I go with the 2. And then if you recall, some of the things that are in this 321 challenge are a whole bunch of chord progressions and then patterns to play within that chord progression. So what I do with students is we're just going shopping, and I've been doing this all week online with them. I just share my screen and we look at some of the options here, and I play them for them so that they can hear them. Now, one of the favorite ones that students have really liked is from level 3, and it's the 1, 5 minor, 4, 2 minor. And before the end of their lesson, they know those numbers. So what is that? It's the 1, now the 5 minor, ooh, cool, and the 4, and the 2, and back to the 1. It has a really cool sound. It's just a little bit different than what they're expecting. So students have really liked some of these chord progressions. And it unlocks, their ears, but it also ties their theory knowledge with it as well. So don't be afraid of getting out this 321 challenge during these offline lessons and start using them to inspire your students so that eventually they can create their own composition. So yes, why now? That's the big question. I wasn't planning on releasing this cookie cutter composition resource right away, but many of you have been asking, why am I talking, or what am I doing during this off-bench time? Because my students usually come to my studio and they spend 30 minutes with me at the piano and then another 30 minutes off bench doing different things, usually with iPad apps and so forth. So I had to reinvent my lessons really quickly. And so I thought, you know what? This composition resource is going to really help me help them compose, and then a lot of it they can do at home. Now here's the other thing. I think that my parents are going to be more excited about my students hanging out at the piano more because of my off-bench activities more than doing things online or off the bench. So that's what I'm hoping, is that this will trigger them getting to the keyboard more often. But I do have ideas for off-bench as well. So first of all, let me tell you what this cookie cutter composition resource includes. And I've got it all in here. I've got it printed off. There's the cover of it right there. And then what I do is I give a nice little story of why it's so important to use cookies as an idea for composition. Basically, what I've been telling you today and taste test first, all that kind of stuff, and the form. And then what's really nice is I used a new program called Loom, where I quick did some videos on how to create a section A and how to create a section B, how to create a bridge from section B back into section A, and how to create an intro and an outro. It's all there. And what I like about this as well is that some of my students aren't so crazy about creating. That, some of them love it, some of them don't. So I always say, or I'm saying to them, look, you have to make a section A and a section B. As soon as you're done, you can be done. We don't have to go any further. But then I always want options for those who want to keep going. So all of those ideas are in this resource. But let me show you what else is in this resource, because I think this may inspire you to do this during your off-bench time. Number one, I've got some staff paper that they can write down their chicken scratch, is what I call it, their ideas. It may be a little messy. Now, they can always notate it as a final draft just by hand. I think that's a good practice as well. But the other thing that I think would be really good for them to do right now is to learn how to use Noteflight. Noteflight is a free program. It's online. They can create their own free account, and they can also connect with you through a community. Now, I'm still experimenting with that, but it has worked so that we all can be in a community together. And what I'm hoping is that we can all share our cookie cutter compositions with each other there as well. But along with the cookie cutter composition resource, I have off-bench plans. And what I did is I didn't just stick with just creative stuff. That's definitely important. But what I did is I came up with a list of things to do that will hopefully inspire them, but also get them doing some other things like work on their reading skills. So I made another little bingo card here. Off-bench bingo is what it's called. And I made 2 levels. There's a later level and an earlier level. Now, some of the things on here is play Piano Maestro for 30 minutes. And listen to a podcast of a composer. Now, all of those things I have linked in this off-bench plan right here. So you don't have to go searching for all of these. But I don't want to clutter the student's notebook with a whole bunch of information. I will give them things during their lessons to do. So now I don't know if I'm making myself clear or not, but basically this is a whole conglomeration collection of different ideas, but also included in here is cookie cutter composition activities, like compose a section A of your composition and notate section A of your composition. So those are all also in there as well. So now, one thing that I do have on here is I want them to listen to podcasts about composers, and I love those Classics for Kids podcasts. I think they're fantastic. So while my students are listening to those, I want them to gather information from them. Now, studies have shown that the more you doodle, the more you listen. I don't know, I think that's true for me. So what I've designed, and I also now just have them on my blog, leelavis.com as well, are one-page reports. Now, my students are going to make a classical style page report and also a one-page composer report. Now, what are they? Well, basically, they're just templates. Now, you're going to see some that are somewhat finished, but not all the way. Alice made this one. It's lovely. And I told her to doodle. I wanted her to doodle. She didn't have to write any information down. I just wanted her to listen. But now she's made nice little boxes where she's going to add information as she goes on. So here you can see someone just about finished most of their Baroque one. And so she's just gathered information from podcasts, from different articles that I have, from my music infographics. If you haven't seen those, they have lots of information on too. But it's just kind of a unique way for students to gather information about a time period or a composer and make it their own. And they're off bench, but they're also coloring their drawing. It's not just completing a worksheet. I don't mind worksheets, but I feel like this is, they're gathering the information and making it their own. So that's why I like those reports. So those are just a couple of samples of the things that are on that off-bench bingo. There's also ideas for note reading, pitch recognition. If some of you have been, taking advantage of the Grand Staff Map product that I have at my blog. That's also a great thing to do for them, for your students to do off bench. And maybe they buy an app like Flashnote Derby so that they can review those landmark notes. I'm not really encouraging any of my families to purchase a lot of apps. I want to give them things that they're either at the piano or doing something that's generating creativity. I think that's my main goal. I know that's my main goal, especially during this time when there's so much screen time, right? So if they're going to use screen time, I want them to be doing something that is creative and generating content for themselves. All right, so now I did have a question. Somebody was saying, oh, they were looking for a group lesson idea for maybe an intermediate level group. And I thought, you know what? I think this cookie cutter composition thing could work well with a group, especially if you're doing a Zoom meeting, because you guys could, the students could share their ideas. They could, play a section A for each other. I was even thinking how fun it would be for you to do some ear training. What did I play there? I played the 1, the 6 minor, the 1. A lot of fun opportunities because you can't always see everybody's hands, so they have to really train their ears. So I think this could, I know this could be a good group lesson option especially for intermediate students who, can grab onto concepts pretty quickly. But I am using this with all of my students. Even my little itty bitties, and it may just be very basic, it may not be fancy, and it may just be 8 measures in section A and 8 measures in section B, and then call it good. So now, a lot of this is on sale, and I'm going to just offer a special price for anybody who wants to jump in right now and try it, because I think it's worth it. I'm seeing already the results of talking chords like this with my students, because I'll review with students before they say goodbye and sign off. I'll say, okay, so what chords are going to be creative with? And they'll say, oh, the 1, 5 minor, 4, 2 minor, and it blows me away. Like, okay, you're right. And they know what they're doing. So I think it's going to really help your students get under the hood of chord progressions and also get their creative juices flowing. So thank you for joining me. If you're not here right now, I hope you can tune in later and watch. And hey, Dorla, thank you for joining me. Oh, it looks like I have your lessons planned for. Ooh, nice. Okay. Ooh, very good. Dorla has some amazing products coming up too at lilavis.com. So stay tuned. And thank you again for being here. And I hope the online lessons are going all right for you. I think that's pretty much our only choice right now. I find it's working. It's exhausting, but it's working. And once I get my feet wet a little bit more in the whole process, I think it's gonna be okay. I even have one adult who thinks that she likes the online better because then she doesn't have to travel to my house and can just practice right up to the lesson time. So it's very interesting, but we may be reinventing ourselves even after this whole lockdown is lifted. All right, take care and take courage. Bye.